Hello. Can you hear us? Can you hear us, David?
I can hear you just fine. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I just want to verify that. Okay, great. At this time, if everyone pledge.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'm going to call the meeting to order. Again, our protocol is that we will be moving to owner comments at two different stages of tonight's meeting. This first section will be those owners that want to speak to anything that is an action item on the agenda or is not on the agenda at all. If you want to speak about something that's a discussion item, and I know we're going to have some discussion, or at least I'm assuming we'll have some about lawn sports and amenities, we're going to ask you to hold those comments until we get down there so that we can have that discussion with you at that time. So having said that, I'm going to begin with owner comments here in the room, and then if there's someone online or anyone online, we will get to you. So the first person I've got on the list is Keith Thompson.
Second.
Okay, great. Thank you, Keith. And then I've got Barbara Sharma. Are you talking about an action item?
Yes, I think it was under action.
Okay. Okay, great.
Okay.
Yeah, great. And again, I need to say this because of last meeting. You have 3 minutes to speak. If you don't use all your 3 minutes, this is not the Congress. You don't get to reserve your time and come back later. So use it or lose it, okay? And we're going to keep time up here. Go ahead, Barb.
Barbara Sharman. After attending the Recreation Committee meeting last evening, I wanted to share some thoughts with our board. The 3 ongoing issues with Advantage at Lakeside are financial, time, and schedule. As it is well known by now, the financial obligations of Advantage Tennis have not been met in the past due to a verbal agreement made by Mr. Holt and the previous management company. Mr. Holt stated last evening that he made this agreement in 2014 and has never paid the 20% in his contract for any lesson outside of children's programming. Advantage Tennis taught 133 hours of private instruction in January of this year, though only paid Croa for 88 of those hours at $5 per hour. Using $82 as the average cost of a private lesson from the Advantage Tennis website, the business made just shy of $11,000 just for the private instruction component in January. Advantage Tennis is able to employ 7 coaches and an administrative assistant. But Mr. Holt stated last evening that he cannot afford to honor the 20% of the partner program contract that he has signed year after year. I do congratulate the committee and the recreation staff on moving towards an hourly court fee to simplify the monthly billing. Ms. Gunyon stated that the average court rental fee is $10 to $12. Unfortunately, that is incorrect. In speaking with USTA at Lake Nona today, running a hard court at their complex starts at $16.20 for a clay court. The national rental rate is $15.72. In order to collect 20% from Advantage Tennis, the rate would need to be close to $17 per court per hour. Please keep in mind that Advantage Tennis overhead cost for a tennis court is $0. Mr. Holt was offered a very generous proposal for scheduling at the meeting last evening, but stated it was not enough and that Advantage Tennis required 3 courts on Tuesday and Thursday evenings for children's programs. The Recreation Committee granted his request. I can only hope that Advantage Tennis will honor their word and use the 3rd court is utilized for children's programming. Advantage Tennis also secured 2 courts for both Saturdays and Sundays, even though it has 4 courts available at the high school on those days. This residential amenity has truly taken the back seat to a very profitable and expanding business. I commend the ethical actions of the partner programs that have met their financial obligations of paying 20% to use the facilities here at Celebration over the year. It is disheartening that Advantage Tennis has been allowed to operate outside of its contract for the length of time by Croa boards, committee, and management, resulting in a financial loss to our homeowners association and an amenity to our residents.
3 minutes on the dot. Okay. Let me just say that I expect that we will tonight, in a moment here, remove that action item from the agenda. There's still work to be done, and your comments are valuable to us, so thank you. Let's see, I have Mr. Tagdir.
The second part.
Second part, okay. Is there anyone online who has an owner comment for the agenda items or non-agenda items?
Yes, Diane Finney.
Okay. Hi, Diane. You've
Hi.
got 3 minutes. Can you hear us?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. You've got 3 minutes.
Thank you. I'm going to read a statement my husband Chris wrote. We are dues-paying residents and would like a clarification from the board as to what the policy is on whether or not you need to be a resident in order to use our facilities in Celebration. The reason for this clarification is that the Park and Rec Board just yesterday declared that our tennis courts are open season for all non-residents to play on. Advantage Tennis, which now dominates our courts, recruits players from all around the Orlando area to come and get lessons at Celebration. The Park and Rec Board just approved yesterday that all people who want a lesson with Advantage Tennis, whether or not you're a resident, can play on our courts. We asked this question: why is it okay for Advantage Tennis to recruit non-residents for lessons, and yet we are as dues-paying residents and the community can't even get on a tennis court for recreational play? Are we also going to allow anyone to come and play on our courts? Do we have to compete with non-residents who come into the community and want to play? Is this the way that the new pickleball courts or croquet or soccer will be treated? We are paying these monthly dues, and why are we required to have a sticker or an ID card? I also am thinking that on my part, it's extremely unfair to the other partner programs who have honestly paid 20%, which yearly to Croa. The recap of the meeting, Darren Holt mentioned that he had a verbal agreement from Steve Waring. I called Steve Waring and talked to him, and he denied ever giving permission for Advantage Tennis to not pay their 20%. I've also have concerns about the legitimate right for Darren's business to be conducted on our courts. Last week, I called the Osceola County Tax Collector's Office, and according to them, his business is not in compliance with the county laws and that he is operating his business illegally. That's just one of many things that I've discovered since a year ago when friends of mine were kicked off the courts by non-residents that were getting a lesson from tennis pros. My own family has been prevented from playing tennis by people who came over from Reunion who were on the courts at a time when Darren Holt had not reserved the courts. And as we are all learning, he's not been paying for the 20% and or the use of the court's rent, which is in the contract at all. It's such a concern. You don't know what it's like to pay dues, to be an honest person that actually loves this community of Celebration, and to be kicked off tennis courts by non-residents. So we are really asking the board to strongly consider the rights that we have in Celebration. I myself looked through the chart.
Diane, that's 3 minutes.
Okay, I just couldn't find rights for non-residents in our charter or bylaws.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate your comments. I do want to say one thing in response quickly, and that is that we do have facilities that are used by non-residents. If you think about the community fields, the soccer programs there have lots of kids and adults who don't live in Celebration but are part of that program. I suspect we could find other examples of that, and we're going to talk about that later. But again, we're going to pull the tennis contract, I think, from tonight's agenda. Brian, did you want to say something?
On the tennis contract, I'd like to keep it there just to give the board a briefing on what happened at the recreation committee. I mean, it'll take 3 or 4 minutes.
Okay, then we'll do that. I don't expect it to be, I don't expect we're going to get to a vote on it.
We're not going to get to a vote. It's going to be a briefing about what the next steps were.
I got it. All right. Any other online comments? All right. Hearing none, then we will move on. Thank you for speaking, both of you. And we're going to go to the adoption of the agenda. Do I have a motion to adopt? Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Great. Now, amendments to the agenda. I know that we want to remove the item D, Communications Advisory Group minutes and the Celebration Hall Advisory Group minutes. Neither of those have been created yet. And then I think that's probably it. Am I correct? Are there any other changes to the agenda?
I thought there had been a,
We already pulled it and moved it.
I was talking about the seal.
It's been moved.
Okay.
If you look at the new agenda, it is now item 7. Okay. All right. All those in favor of the revised agenda, say aye.
Okay.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries 7-0. All right. At this time, Patrick, can you pull up the slide deck? We're going to try again and see if I can get it to work this time.
We have to approve the minutes first.
What's that? Oh, we do. I'm sorry. I was so excited about my slide deck. It's the highlight of my, okay, never mind. So we've got the Croa board meeting minutes. Do I have a motion to approve those?
Motion.
Good. Is there a motion to approve? Celia, is there a second?
Second.
Bill, is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Motion carries 7-0.
And while we removed them, I think the value of showing the celebration hall and the communication minutes in the future is to make sure they're not hidden from residents. So we may relabel them, just there for communication, but I think there's value in having them there on a 90-day project.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, now, Patrick, look at that. All right. So I want to just briefly talk about what we've been calling job 1, which is to go fast and fix stuff. And we've been talking about maintenance and repairs and landscape. That's the primary areas. I'll say what we've always said, which is we're here to get it right, not to be right. This will apply to everything we talk about tonight. It's very easy for us as board members, as volunteers in the community, to become defensive. None of us like to be criticized. None of us like to be called out. None of us like to be told that we're bad or awful. But our goal here is really to get it right. And that's what we hope everyone will do with us. And of course, we know that that's what management is trying to do as well. Now, tonight, we know that this is the time, as we've been going along, to take action. And I want to give you some sense of that. Work is currently being done in a number of different places. I want to just highlight very briefly that, for example, here's a before and after picture at Lakeside. As you go around the community now, you're going to start to see work happening. This is a very brief example. Natalie sent me, 50 pictures today. And so these are a few of the things that are happening. That's Lakeside. This is in Artisan Park. We've got some pavilions there. I don't see too many. I don't see any Artisan Parkers here. Oh, you've got one or two. Okay, that's right. You're my neighbor. We've got, we've got cleaned up pavilions, and there's good things happening there. In addition, many of you have seen what's been going on in the South Village service area. This I'm particularly proud of because this was a collaborative process with CCBD. They did work on the trimming of the trees. We did our landscaping work, and we moved it up as a priority because it's so centralized to Celebration. And so that's some of the initial work. Here's a little bit more of it after they got the sod in. So I think people are seeing that, and that's just one example. And then the dog park, let's see if we got it here. We've got a little bit of video there so you can see. Video? This is where you go ooh and ah. In any event, the real ooh and ah is that this work is happening. That's really the point. And so we've got people out there working on how many projects, Natalie, right now?
I would say 15-ish.
Okay, so there's a lot going on. So the point is, work is being done. Now, having said all that, what we're going to continue to do tonight in this meeting will be to approve funding for a number of different projects, maintenance, repairs, landscaping. We're also going to authorize vendors to get to work and help them and encourage them to be underway and know that they're doing the job the way we want it done. And then we're going to get the work done. And that's really our purpose. Now, I want to just briefly tell you, last month in the 2 board meetings we had, we approved 45 action items. In terms of maintenance, there was over $500,000 worth of projects that were approved. We approved a 3-year landscaping program for 2 companies that was worth $900,000. It's a total of $1.4 million. So we got a lot done last month. Tonight, we are going to be dealing with 24 action items. Maintenance and landscape will be roughly $197,000 worth of projects. We're also going to look at and hopefully approve 2 playgrounds. For those of you that think we hate children, probably not. $395,000 for playgrounds. And the total then is $593,000 worth of projects to look at. So a lot is going on because there was a lot that had to be done. The reality, of course, is the question that people ask is, where does that money come from? I just want to remind you that maintenance and repair comes out of replacement reserves. As of March 31st, we had $2.5 million in that fund, so we're well funded. Landscaping contracts come out of operating expenses. We had $1.8 million as of March 31st. Those numbers may be updated now a bit, but that gives you a general sense. And then when we do amenities, that comes out of capital funds. That's something completely different. That fund had $2.3 million as of March 31st. This is really the approach to correcting years of neglect. We know that it comes from you as community members making us aware in a variety of ways of problems in your home or in your neighborhood. Inspections have begun. We have 3 inspectors, as you'll hear tonight. They went on tours. I know that some of you remember doing your first tour with an inspector back in the day, but Jack McLaughlin and Gary Hudspeth took our inspectors out. Lorraine, you were on one of those tours, right?
Gary.
Yeah. So the inspectors are working, and 3 inspectors working full-time now. We also know that management will go in and review and research and come up with bids to do this work. And then service areas and the community at large will consult with us, we'll do a budget analysis, and we'll get approvals from service areas and different communities. And then the board reviews those things in terms of management recommendations. We do review the bids. We get the board package before you all see it, and we have the opportunity to ask questions and to dive deep. And ultimately, we hope that there'll be an approval, either through the consent agenda or an action item. So that's the process that we're going through. The point is, we want to keep working and getting things done. We know that this is job number 1. So with that as an overview, now what I want to turn to are the action items. And Patrick, you can turn the screen back to the agenda. Oh yeah, there we go. At this time, I would look for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll make that motion.
Cindy moves that, and Celia seconds. Any discussion? All right, I'll call the vote, and we're going to do this as a roll call vote. So let's start. David, how do you vote?
Yes, I approve.
Brian?
Fine, yeah.
Celia?
Yeah.
Cindy?
Yes.
Bill?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. The consent agenda passes 7-0.
So just to be clear, that's A through T.
That's correct. If you have an agenda, it's actually A through U on the more recent one, as you see it there. We just moved something up. We moved them up and around. All right. Thank you very much. Next is action item number 2, a motion to approve replacement of the playground equipment at Long Meadow Park by Phoenix Works in the amount of $166,000 paid out of Croa replacement reserve funds. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Jim makes the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, second from Brian. All right. Lauren, or somebody on your staff, you want to talk about this? Natalie.
So over the last couple of months, we've been getting proposals from several different vendors for playground equipment. Some of the proposals range from $420,000 to, $500,000. We looked at very, multiple different plans, different types of equipment, different, safety stuff, artificial turf, etc. And luckily we have a company that proposed us an amazing playground for half the price of the other vendors, and they can get it here within 14 weeks, where the other ones will be about 6 months.
Thank
So-
you. And the board has seen this package and the bid and the photos. This was a dramatically lower bid than we had from the previous vendors. Are we giving up anything that reflects on safety or the ability of children to use
No.
this?
No,
You're actually gaining the ability to put in artificial turf without exceeding a $300,000 to $400,000 price tag.
Yep.
Okay. Questions or comments from board members?
So on spring or
Brian, can you put the microphone, I just can't hear you.
so on this one here, which is Spring Park, we are replacing all the underneath because
Correct.
it was bad from before.
correct.
And when was the last time that was replaced? I know Long Meadow was pretty recently, but
10 years ago?
I think Spring Park is about 10 years ago. Long Meadow is approximately 5, but when you pull out the equipment from Long Meadow, it's going to completely damage the existing turf. That's why it needs to be replaced. We did look at that after discussions with you and some residents to see if we could salvage the existing, and almost every vendor said not possible.
so when we're making this expenditure, it's really, they're tied together is what you're telling us.
Correct.
Okay.
And Brian, I went out and I inspected the conditions because I'm trying to tie this into the reserve study, and it definitely is time to do it all. It's even overdue a little bit.
Other comments or questions?
I think this is awesome. It's creating what's the safety issue now to be fixed, and the kids are really good. Thank you.
Anyone else?
What's the lifespan of this equipment?
15 to 20 years.
15 to 20 years, okay.
Depends on the kids.
All right,
So- Jackson?
yes, go ahead.
Yeah. Just the only question I have has to do with the artificial turf. What's the lifespan on that? And if damage does occur, is this the type of artificial turf that can be replaced? That can be repaired rather than replaced?
Yes, we can
What do we-
repair it, the artificial turf. It would, we'd probably pull a piece of the existing turf, put it into wherever it was, and then replace an outside part that isn't as noticeable. Same thing that we would do out at the civic corridor.
So just in that realm, I know we don't have storage space, but when they're putting down the artificial turf, there may be extra pieces left. If we can keep those for repair.
Absolutely.
Any other comments? All right, then I'm going to call the vote here. I'll start with you, Jim.
Did I make the motion? Yes.
Yes. Bill?
Yes.
You're in the wind.
Let David vote while.
Yeah, David, go ahead and vote.
Yes.
And then you can mute yourself because we're hearing your microphone. Cindy?
You're hearing,
Yes.
you're hearing wind.
Celia?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. Motion passes 7-0. The item number 3 is a motion to approve replacement of the playground equipment at Spring Park by Phoenix Works in the amount of $229,650 paid out of the Croa replacement reserve funds. Is there a motion to approve?
I'll make the motion.
Celia makes the motion.
I'll second it.
Jim seconds it. Any conversation or discussion? I think this is very much like what we've just been talking about, but anything specific here?
There's no swing. Are they?
There will be swings. Yeah.
I was going to say swings or
I got the
so.
updated renderings today, and it has swings on it.
Does it have, just one question, does it have, remember Brian, I sent a long time ago to you, does it have the baby swing with the mother swing attached? So when the baby is in the swing, the mother is sitting on the swing at the same time facing the child?
I don't believe it.
Ask if they have it. Do you understand? Do you know?
Yeah,
which one
I know
I'm
we
talking about?
had that in a couple of the other renderings. I don't think in
This one
the
does.
other bids, I don't think it's in this bid, but we can ask if
Okay.
it can be swapped out for something.
Okay, that's awesome. I think this is awesome that we're giving the kids new playgrounds, because I go there with my grandchildren all the time, and they really need to be replaced, so this is a good thing.
We're also looking to do Lakeside Park as well. That needs it, Lakeside Playground.
Okay. Any other comments? All right. We will do.
My comment would be the same as the prior one, because since this is a different vendor, I believe.
Same vendor.
Same vendor.
Oh, same vendor. Okay. Same comments though.
Okay. So David, while we've got you open, let's go ahead. I'm going to call the vote. How do you vote?
Yes. Yes.
Thank you. Brian?
Yes.
Celia?
Yes.
Cindy?
Yes.
Bill?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. Motion passes 7-0.
I would really, if I could, Mr. President, just like us as we're reviewing the engineering study to really, it's kind of like with replacing the shingles on your roof, you know. In Florida, they last so long, so I suspect we need to be very careful that we're not fooling ourselves by assuming it's going to last 20 years.
They said 15 to 20 on the warrant.
Yeah, right. Okay. Next item up is number 4, motion to approve purchase of 13 solar lights for Celebration Dog Park. This is where the cheering starts. As approved by ARC and TCC in the amount of $18,000 from the Dog Park Fund and $35,428 from capital improvement. Is there a motion to approve?
I like the motion.
I'll second it.
All right. Discussion.
First, I got two questions. First off, why 13? Why not 10? Why not 8? Why not 9? I'd like to understand the logic in 13. It's probably 4,000 a light. And when we had discussed this last year, I remember the dog park was going to put in their 18. I thought we were going to use some technology funds.
We're getting there.
Okay, so I'm headed down that path as we're approving a motion. So why 13 lights?
So the vendor originally suggested around 26, I believe. In going back and forth with them and placing them strategically throughout the dog parks, we whittled it down to 13, trying to create a happy medium between just barely providing light, but actually and adjusting for the cost, because we know they are about $4,000 a piece. The nice thing about these is they don't need to necessarily be cemented into the ground. So if they're placed in one spot and it doesn't work, we can move them to a different spot. Obviously,
Easily?
Yeah.
But they're still secure.
They're still
in a
secure.
Hurricane or strong thunderstorm.
Yes. They actually have them over at Cape Canaveral, and they're used at their spaces. So.
And are they LED or?
Not quite sure. There were specific soft lighting requests from TCC and ARC that was necessary for their approval.
Other comment?
Yeah, they are.
They are LED. Von Roberts, who's the chair of Park, says they're LED. So they would be long lasting lights then.
Okay, let me, other board comments. Oh, David, go ahead.
Yeah, I have a comment. I think this is great. This is something that the Dog Park Committee has been working on for 4 or at least 4 years, maybe 5. And what's important is that it expands the use of the dog park beyond dark, not so much this time of year, but come wintertime when it gets dark at 5. So this really expands it nicely. The only suggestion I would make is this may be the only group that raises its own funds and has raised its own funds. Philosophically, I would love to see 100% of this coming from Croa capital improvements and to be used for other things that may not really be essential but nice. So I know that we have a motion on the table, but I would have a friendly amendment that would reduce the dog park fund, maybe reduce it so that their contribution is 10,000 and leave them some cash in their account for other amenities that they may so choose.
I will note that it's a small amount, but we are leaving them $661 in their account as seed money for other fundraising efforts.
And my proposal would be to leave $8,661. I mean, really, this is something that we should, I think, homeowners as a whole should be paying for and not leave it up to the committee. This is really expanding the, if you will, the lifespan during times of the year when it gets darker. So I think it's a valuable improvement. I mean, we'll see how see how others feel about that.
Before we get there, I want to talk about the technology committee because we've had some conversations. We've got the chair of that committee here. Tom, you want?
Yeah. Going back some time, we reviewed the proposal for the dog park lighting, and there were 26 lights. We were not able to find any standards that address lighting levels for dog parks, but there are plenty of other lighting standards, like for parks and parking lots and all that. The original proposal of 26 lights was very consistent with park lighting in terms of light contours and the variance. Then we saw the proposal to reduce the number of lights, and we have not seen the lighting contours that would result from having fewer lights or what areas would be lit. So that was our only comment. So we haven't seen the new proposal.
Oh, so Jim, do you want to say anything or no? I'm keep looking over to you, but go ahead.
I do.
Okay, go ahead.
So this kind of got it kickstarted. Brian reached out to us to start talking about this when I was chairman of that committee. It was very interesting. We did have a number of meetings, but because of the length of it and because of the turnover and the chairman, I believe we were kind of left out of the last parts of it unintentionally. So, I talked with Tom about this, and we both agreed that that's something they're willing to do as sort of a proof of concept, because we wanted to talk through that and what should the money from the technology be spent on, and it shouldn't be spent on replacements of things or anything like that. So this is an amenity. It's a new thing, and it helps with one of the goals that the technology committee has.
All right, so thank you. Having said that, David, my suggestion, and I'll throw it out to the whole board, is that the $18,000 that was coming from the dog park fund actually be reduced in half to $9,000 from the dog park fund and $9,000 from the technology committee. So
that sounds great. That sounds great.
So now the question is, the motion was made by Celia. Would you accept that amendment or no?
Sure.
Yes. And who was it seconded by?
Cindy.
Cindy,
Yes.
would you accept that?
Yes.
All right. Is there a conversation about that? Brian, go ahead.
I personally would not be a fan of that. And the reason I would not be a fan of that is because I do remember, I had a conversation with you, I had a conversation with Dury, we got the dog party involved. We've had, one of the problems with lighting out there has been, we spent $807,000 building the park, and there's always been it's my turn at the pot of money type approach that we get from residents. Technology committee had been working with CCDD on some solar lighting issues. So I said, this is a perfect time to do it. I even offered could try to do a match there. The fact that the dog park brought money to me was a solid positive.
So what's your objection to splitting it half and half?
Because if you take it out of the technology budget, it's still Croa money. It's just pot A versus pot B, as opposed to the dog park money is actually dog park money. So what would you propose? I'm trying to figure out. I'm a little out of it tonight. I apologize, but I'm just not following what you'd like. Well, it's because I haven't told you. I'm sitting there thinking, I understand Dave wants to have a little seed money, but I would probably go with 15. If you go with 15 out of the dog park, then you're going with 38 out of the other. We're still paying more. Technology can pay 10,000. The rest can come out of capital improvements. I'm perfectly happy with round numbers. Let's do it to get it done so that we don't have this argument forever. But then it's a material enough money to the dog park that they contributed heavily. They raised the money. They've been wanting it forever. At least 4 years I've been on the board. I think it's a good solution.
So can you just specifically state the breakout that you're looking
If
for?
it was going to be my motion, we would approve solar lights with 15,000 coming from the dog park, 10,000 coming from the technology committee budget, and the remainder coming from capital improvement funds.
How much for the tech one
Can,
again?
can,
1,000 even, 15,000 even from the dog park funds, and the rest from capital improvement funds.
can I make a
Uh,
different comment?
Go ahead.
A different comment is, when we're building, proposing pickleball, we're putting in lights at the beginning. When we're talking about croquet, we're putting lights in at the beginning. We didn't put in lights at the beginning. Maybe that was an oversight. So I think this is an odd group, and I mean that in a loving way. It's odd that we have asked them, raise your own money. And so that's why I'm just saying, let them use that money that they raised for something else that's not essential. I mean, I think lights have been essential. There've been arguments for lights for years. So, I would go back to the revised motion, the 9,000 and 9,000, splitting it. Give them a good pot of money for their own future amenities that they want to have.
Yeah, I don't think we can pass that tonight because I don't think the technology committee should pay that until they've reviewed the final proposal.
Well, we can do what we can do that.
I know you can.
What you're saying is you don't think we should, all right? Just to be clear, we have the authority to do it.
Right, I understand that. I would like to give deference to the technology committee to review that before it's okayed. But
I will point
am
out that the dog park folks have been waiting a long time to get the lights, so I'm not anxious to defer everything.
I understand.
I think it's certainly possible to recalculate the numbers at a later date. I think the question is, do we want to approve the lights? It sounds like we've still got some work to do about who's going to pay for them.
We got a motion. We can vote on the motion. You can call the vote.
I could, former Mr. President. I'm not going to yet. What I would, and I want to hear from Cindy, do you have anything to say on this?
Well, the point that David just made about, the pickleball courts will have lights. If we do the croquet, they will have lights. I do think that money that they've raised over the years could be not better spent, but differently spent on things that aren't essential to the dog park. Just make it a little bit different, make it a little bit nicer, getting something else for the dogs to do while they're in there. As far as where the money comes from, I prefer David's idea, 50-50, but I even like better not having them pay for it all.
Cindy, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Would you be amenable to just approving the purchase of the lights without identifying where the funds are coming from, other than from Croa, where are we coming from? Capital improvement. At this point, with the option of going back and revising and taking money from other pots. In other words,
So that will leave it open if the technology committee decides we need more lights.
yeah, and more discussion about whether or not the dog park committee should pay anything. But for tonight, saying we simply approve this out of capital improvement, and then we will come back and revisit it.
Okay.
Celia?
I made the motion, yes, I'm good with that.
Okay.
Let's vote.
Okay, now I'm hearing it from enough people. All right, so the revised motion, just to be clear, the revised motion would be to approve the purchase of 13 solar lights for Celebration Dog Park as approved by ARC and TCC in the amount of whatever that total, can you give me a total?
35,428.
What is it?
35,428.
No, it's going to be
Plus 80.
Roughly
53,428.
roughly $54,000 from
Gotcha.
capital improvement. That's the motion, okay? And Cindy and Celia have agreed to the change in that. So now we'll take a roll call vote. Start with you, Jim.
Yes.
Bill?
Yes.
Cindy?
Yes.
Celia?
Yes.
Brian?
Grudgingly.
Grumpy old man. David?
Yes.
And I'm a yes.
So is that a 6 grudging or is that a
It's
7?
Six and a, I don't know, six and a.
6 and 3/4.
Yeah, okay. And we will revisit where those other funds come from. For those of you that were engaged and interested in the dog park, congratulations, we've at least finally gotten to that stage, so. Okay. Yeah, yay. Action item number 5 is just called the Advantage Tennis Contract. not quite sure where we want to start here. We had obviously comments from owners, and there've been a lot of comments about tennis and about the existing contract. So let me turn it over to you, Lauren, to just, or
I would kick it to Brian first to do it. Or do you want me to start first?
oh,
Brian wanted to do the recap of the meeting last night.
oh, that, yes.
Smile, smile,
So
smile.
in other words, what I'd like to do is just say what happened last night.
Yes, please, go ahead.
We had a very good recreation meeting. It was crisp. In talking about tennis, what we agreed was, first off, we did talk about resident versus non-residents. We have partner programs, for example, soccer, where 45% of the children are non-residents. So to sit up here and say that we're not going to allow residents to play tennis is wrong, I think. So it is residents and non-resident. That's been our policy from before, and we shouldn't be changing that policy. We said we need a full-scale RFP this late summer and fall for going forward, but we wanted to have a contract for the period of June 1st to December 31st of this year. We wanted to have a flat rate, $10 to $12 about what was talked about. I don't want to really get into it arguing. We empowered Lauren to work with Darren Holt to get it done, but we didn't want to do any backwards accounting. No one in this room can tell us what oral promises were really made, and people's memories get very lax when they work for a different company than yours now. So really no argument there. Just move it forward and have an RFP process this late year. So flat, you got 2 courts. He has children's programs on Tuesdays and Thursdays. He has to have 1 additional court from like 4 p.m. to 8, 9 p.m., something like that. On Tuesday and Thursday, we said, fine with that. We're going to have management, including Nikki, study everything and stuff like that. We'll go through the work. We'll have a different thing. We said we wanted Lauren to work with Darren, get a contract done that this board could look at on May 27th during our next board meeting to be effective June 1. And that gets us through the end of the year, and tennis is behind us.
Okay, so May 27th then would be our action item date. Other comments from the board?
I have a question.
I thought it was a really smooth meeting. It was professional. And the only thing they were changing was the proposal said courts 1 and 2, and we decided it would be safer for 4 and 5
because of kids.
Didn't really make a difference.
Really,
Well, I don't, mostly what I know about the tennis, I only learned in the last, 60 days, but is the schedule that you're now temporarily using, is that more or less of the same usage as what we've?
What we said was we wanted to eliminate this. What they had before is this approach where you can have this court for these hours, this court for these hours, which led to total confusion. So we're going to have 2 courts that they can use. The other 3 courts for the public. Nikki, working with Lauren and team, is actually looking at scheduling software because we made utilization of these courts to be totally ad hoc, which I don't think is really helping anything. You have to schedule the soccer fields to use them, even if you're a resident. So we're moving forward to get a scheduling software in place that will actually work, get the process ran professionally, and move forward.
I would kind of like, and I have thought about this for even before I'm on the board. I think at least a couple of the tennis courts should have resident access only to a card. And I think we should potentially see how much that's cost to see if that's worth it. Because what I'm hearing from you is, again, hearing from both sides, that we had a partner program that didn't live up. Rather than just like cutting them off, you don't think that's true?
I don't think it's not that they didn't live up.
The problem that was specifically stated last night is we have a partner program that became very successful and actually outgrew our facilities. Everybody agreed this problem last night could be solved if you had 8 tennis courts, but we don't have 8 tennis courts, we have 5. So, group rates versus $5 and what a previous executive director here may have said orally to somebody, that was accepted from an accounting perspective for years. So I can't sit here and argue that that's different. So I'm not going to argue there's anything unethical because I don't believe that's necessarily a true statement at all.
So you don't think he's reached any contracts?
I think he's acted in good shape. He runs,
Okay.
he's a coach out there. He runs the tennis program out there. He takes people to those programs. So I'm going to be very careful here. I think he's been very successful. I think he's outgrown it. There's a frustration on all sides, and this is an attempt to try to address it. I suspect we'll go to something like this when we go to the RFP, because
So,
there are people who'd like to have it be for residents only and not the partner program, and that's not going to be acceptable answer either.
and the idea for doing a contract for the rest of the year is not to completely disrupt his business, give us a chance to look at it again.
We have a brand new recreation committee with 5 new members. We need to dial down the heat. There's way too much heat on this one. So dial it down, get the accounting solved, which we can do. We can actually track it and audit it and everything like that. We need to get the software in place so we can better manage out there, and then do a real RFP and move forward.
Celia?
I think, like Brian says, he's not doing anything wrong. His program has grown so much. And the amount of children that are right there, there's like little 4 and 5-year-olds that are taking tennis lessons. Didn't he say that last night? Like, there's a lot. It's built up so fast, you can't keep up with it. Like,
They
way we're
were a
outgrowing our
beneficiary of
numbers.
COVID like other outdoor sports.
Yeah.
I would say we have other partner programs that have outgrown our facilities and will be coming up for RFP just to somewhat address those issues and the contractual issues. So it's not the only program that we're running into these issues. It's just the one at the forefront at the moment.
All right, other comments or questions?
Yeah, am I going to totally screw up the timeline if I talk about this more?
No,
I don't want you to, how are we going to enforce the reservations?
That's why we're going to get software. We should be able to know how many hours he's reserved everything for and go from there. Plus, we want to know how often it's really being utilized, because it helps us determine how many courts they really need and stuff like that. And for the resident ones, we ought to also have the reservation system.
Wouldn't access cards provide that data for us without someone having to be involved?
They might. I mean, again, I want to be careful that we don't see everything as a nail because we've got a hammer. I think that technology might help us, but it also has.
We're talking about me, having a handler of technology.
Yeah. But I think it's a possibility, and I think it's something we need to look into, but clearly not something we're going to decide instantly. It's got a fairly steep expense to it for a number of reasons, as you know, including the ability to have Wi-Fi and get out there. So I think it's something to consider. I think the other question is whether or not we want to gate off any of those courts. Maybe we do, and we'll think about that. So I think it's a conversation worth continuing, but probably that's the most we can do with it tonight. Bill?
Yeah, it just seems, I know it's kind of specific at the moment, but it just seems like it is worth a discussion as to what's the right mix of non-residents to residents with any of these partner programs. Because I don't play tennis, but I would feel it pretty much like the way we heard the conversation earlier that, I can't play there and this is my court.
And I think to that question, Bill, that's what the Recreation Committee is working on.
Okay.
And I want to speak to Barb and Diane and others who are, I know, incredibly frustrated with all of this. We hear you. On the other hand, following proper process is critical. We had an agreement. We have partners. What we do with one partner affects what we do with other partners and the precedent that it sets. And I'm not comfortable with rushing to a judgment, even though it feels like we've been moving super slow. We need to do this the right way and get it right. And so that's what we've asked the Recreation Committee to do. What Brian and Celia have said back to us is they're moving in the right direction. Management has acknowledged that. May 27th, we're going to have the next step in this. It will clearly be a limiting from where we are today of what Advantage Tennis can do. And we move closer towards getting to the process. It's really the RFP where I think we're going to be able to identify this and say what we want and how we want it to run. So that's my take on it. Any final comments before we move on? All right. Thank you all for the conversation. Thank you for your comments to us. All right. Item number 6 is a motion to approve, is it still 5 resident fee waiver requests? Board members, you have that in your package. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right. In all 5 of these situations, management recommends waiving the fees. Any discussion? All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
7-0. Action item number 7 is a motion to approve replacement of the decorative seal at Founders Park by Phoenix Works in the amount of $1,500 from Croa replacement reserves. Is there a motion to be made there?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second. I'll second.
Now, David, go ahead. You had asked
Yeah,
to talk.
Yeah, so the only question I had on this was the price. We're talking, the seal is in bad shape and it deserves to be repaired, replaced appropriately. If it was $1,500 for repair, I could get that, but $1,500 for replacement seems like it's awfully low. So I'm interested in what this company's background is with something so unique like that. I mean, it's like real specialty work. Is this their expertise? And how can it be such a low price? That just surprised me.
Can I add? Because I read it as this $1,500 is only to remove the seal, and we don't have a price yet on how much it's going to cost
correct.
to actually replace it.
Yeah. David, there was a line in there that you may not have seen that says, next steps are replacement and reinstallation of the seal, but we are not certain yet as to what that price will be and or specific details of the cover replacement. So I think they agree with you.
Okay, as long as that's, okay.
Celia?
So Phoenix Works
Yeah.
is the same company that's doing the playground,
Correct.
correct? So when they remove the seal,
They're gonna cover it up, safety, make sure that it's
Right.
good to go while they take it back to the workshop. Try to remove the metal thing that's on there, try to evaluate with their welders and their design team and whatnot, how much it's gonna cost to actually create a new seal.
did they give you a time frame?
It all just depends.
How about a ballpark?
Ballpark, I mean, it could take 2 months.
The ballpark on cost,
Oh,
just
cost,
out of curiosity.
Well, I don't know if I care so much about the cost, but.
the time of it
replacing
being, I mean, it just all depends on if they have to replace the metal
Because it
part
has
or
to be
not,
done.
or, you know.
Do we maybe want to prioritize that for them?
Yeah.
Above,
Everything else.
Because that's so important that.
I would really prefer to get the playgrounds done first. We do care about the cost here. I don't want to rush.
I
mean,
know, I misspoke about the cost.
Okay.
it's just a question, Brian.
Any other comments?
I want to get the playgrounds done.
All right. I'm going to call for the vote here, Jim.
Well, one last question. Do they have experience doing something like this? This is a pretty unique setting.
They do
Is that
have
part of their
third-party
experience?
vendors
Okay.
do it. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Okay,
Jim?
okay.
Yes.
Bill?
Yes.
Cindy?
Yes.
Celia?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. Motion passes 7-0. Thank you. All right. Last action item is the resident payment plan request. Board members, you received information last week about this. Go ahead.
So we have a person that's approximately 6 months in arrears on their dues. They've proposed a payment plan to get back up to date by June. We did not send it over to legal for them to draft anything until it was approved by the board, if it would be approved by the board.
So one of the questions really is that historically, I don't think we've approved these kinds of requests in recent years. I'm trying to remember. Brian, do you or David?
You're on I don't.
In the olden
I don't remember
days, we
seeing
did.
it coming across last week. So what is,
Okay.
I just may have missed it. I'm sorry.
In the olden days, we did.
We did, yes. In
The olden
So
days.
someone's
When
just,
dinosaurs roamed the earth.
so,
Somebody's close to getting into the collections and
And placing a lien.
placing a lien, and to avoid that process, they they proposed a repayment plan.
Since not all the members of the board have seen this, could I ask that this be tabled until the next board meeting and that the full item be attached to the board packet so that members can see it? Is that acceptable?
Sir, I just,
Okay, if everybody hasn't seen it, I don't want you voting on something you haven't seen. Okay, that's acceptable?
Yes, thank you.
All right, so motion to table, all those in favor? Opposed? Table.
Aye.
Okay. All right, now we are moving to the discussion items portion of the evening's entertainment. We're going to start with a transition and management update. We have Roger Edwards from Grand Manners, who is here tonight. And I think we're going to start, Roger, with you. I know you've got one issue or one statement to make around billing.
Yeah. So it came to our attention that we had a little bit of a glitch with our invoicing. The corporate team and I had a meeting this morning to understand exactly what happened and to correct it. So what I can tell you is there was a setup error going back to the beginning of the year. For some reason, the community was set up to receive coupons rather than statements. And this caused the first quarter and second quarter statements to not be processed timely. What should have happened is in March, the first week of March, residents should have received their statement for the payment due in April. What happened was that residents got that statement mid-April instead of early March. And so we had several late payments, we had confusion, chaos, and then unbeknownst to us, the system sent out a reminder notice last week to all these residents with some very strong language about late fees and interest, which if I was a Croa resident, I'd be pretty ticked off to get that letter. And we are humbly embarrassed and asked for forgiveness on that. And we've changed it so that the technology now is set up correctly. It's garbage in, garbage out. We honestly hit the wrong toggle on the accounting software to say coupons instead of statements. So all of the, we had several residents that received a letter saying that we were proposing to impose late fees and interest. But please know that we caught the error in time to reverse all of the late fees and interest. However, we didn't catch it in time to take it from the post office before it was mailed. So you can disregard those notices. We are set up now to where the first week of June, residents will get a statement indicating what their third quarter payment is for July. And that is on everyone's radar. June 6th is the date that those are going to be produced. I'm personally going to look at them with our accounting team to ensure that they're correct, and then they will be mailed out well in advance of the third quarter. And then fourth quarter, we should be on track as well. So again, we sent that email out. I think I got over 150 emails from residents today. I've almost responded to all of them. I've had very pleasant conversations with homeowners who understand and rightly upset. And but I think we've fixed it finally. And again, we're deeply sorry.
Yeah, I want to make one comment and I'll turn over to the rest of the board. I got an email from a resident that said, you know, I don't understand why an executive vice president's apologizing for an issue, but suggesting you contact someone at a lower level if there's a problem. I think the answer to that is that the problem that occurred was a corporate problem, and that's why there was a corporate response. We became aware of this just in the last 24 hours. I was on the phone with corporate this morning at 7:30. By noon, we had a response and a fix. And the reason that people are being directed to us locally is that Lauren and her staff are the people that we want you to deal with if there's still a problem after that. But what you just heard Roger describe is the corporate accounting problem that had to get fixed. So that's, I think, the explanation. Other comments or questions from the board? Cindy?
As you know, I got a late notice, and so did my friend Alice. And she's aware of what was going on, but she was like me, just kind of like waiting to see how it played out. When she called the call center the day she got the late notice, and that would have been Saturday, so I guess Monday, she said, well, we got a letter saying things were, we weren't gonna get late fees and interest. The person who answered the phone said, well, I don't know anything about that. So I'm assuming that this decision and all this is going to be pushed down to the people that answer the phones. So they're not getting a second message. You're telling them everything's fixed and they call just to confirm and they're not saying, we don't know anything about it. So just let it trickle down a little bit, maybe.
Thank you. Any other comments? All right, Lauren, I'm going to turn it over to you to talk about staffing, call center, and the front desk matrix, which sounds like a new movie.
All right, we are fully staffed at the management level. In administration, we only have an IT administrator position open. We've redone the job description in attempts and reposted in attempts to get new applicants, and we're actively interviewing. We have 2 part-time pool and park monitors positions open, 3 are filled, and one is now a full-time position that we are interviewing for. So really, we're getting close to full staff.
What does a field monitor do?
Essentially the same thing as a park and pool monitor.
Oh, okay. But is that
Out of
only
the
at
athletic
the
field.
athletic field?
We use them as interchangeably.
Okay.
I'll move over to the call center stats. So from April 1 to April 30, there were 869 calls. That's 21 business days with an average of 41.4 calls a day. The call center resolution rate was 92.6%, leaving 65 calls transferred to town hall, or the resident was told they would get a call back and a message was sent to us through Serenet. The average time on hold was 38 seconds. The average time on the phone with an agent was 3 minutes and 44 seconds. And the average time for calls to transfer back to town hall remained high at 1 minute and 54. The caller types, mostly residents, then you trickle down at 708, closing agents 61, vendor 65, other 30, declarant builder 2, and board matter, which I'm not quite sure what that color type was 3. We left off the other items because the report generated some very odd numbers, so I couldn't give you accurate numbers on the reason for calling and the topic of the call, but I would hazard to say that they're along the same statistical lines as you've received previously. I've talked with Patrick and with Roger about alterations to the way we're using the call center, and we've come up with a proposed solution to when we switch out the phones in the next month or so. We will move to a phone tree system with multi-call ringing in the office. So if you're calling for a Parks and Rec or lifestyle question, press 1. It'll ring to all of the phones in that department. If you're calling about an ARC or covenants question, press 2. It'll ring to that department. Finance, press 3. And then all other calls will be triaged to the call center. So local questions can be answered locally, as that's the vast majority of the other call types. And the call center just can't be expected to know the answer of when the car show is in downtown Celebration. So hopefully we'll have that in place in the next month or so, and that will alleviate some of the issues.
Cindy?
Lauren, I'm looking at the spreadsheet that was part of the board packet, and for some reason, we just had a bunch of calls about ID tags.
Oh, no, those are walk-ins. That matrix, that's the matrix for the front counter. Those are all the people that come into the front counter and what they came in for.
That makes sense. Thank you, sorry.
Other comments or questions? All right. Thank you. Appreciate it. We got front desk matrix.
That's just for your review. It's just a spreadsheet. The ladies up front keep track of how many people are coming in on various topics throughout the week.
Are we going to start tracking how many people come in to buy swag?
We did.
I'm modeling swag tonight. You can get Celebration logoed, what, shirts and
Vest, you can get a vest.
Shirts, vests,
Vest.
jackets,
Yeah.
umbrellas,
Christmas
blankets.
ornaments.
Yeah. So thank you for doing that. I'm still looking for red, white, and blue for the 4th of July, but I'm just saying.
Excuse me, you have to go and order it, the patriotic shirt that you're going to wear in the parade.
We have to pay for our own shirt.
Yes.
Comes out of the salary you get, buddy. All right.
So Jackson, before we move on management update, I'm just interested in an update on the inspections, something I raised 2 meetings ago and last meeting. What's the status of the actual inspections? How many inspections have actually occurred as we move towards quarterly inspections? And then also, what is the status from the complaints that have been filed by residents on the portal starting last November? What's the status of those? How many of those and what's their status?
And I can start reporting on those at the next meeting. We were down to 1 inspector for quite a while. We had 2 just onboarded. 1 just started doing inspections by herself this week. Our other new one will hopefully be starting inspections by themselves next week. So we can get you accurate weekly inspections that are being completed with 3 fully trained inspectors and things coming in through SearNet.
Yeah, and I need to make a correction. Earlier in the meeting, I said that inspectors were being trained by Jack McLaughlin. He texted me to say that wasn't the case. I think I was having a deja vu flashback to when he trained me. Was 4 of the toughest hours of my life. But in any event, I apologize for that. I do know that Gary took some folks out. My understanding was that Jack was doing it, but he did not. So I apologize to you, Jack, but thank you very much for your wisdom and service when it comes to covenants. All right.
Thank you, Lauren. Thank you for the update.
Yeah, go ahead, Brian.
On inspection, one of the comments that has been made several times that I've heard is that people really found value in the Friday flash and some of those when we talked about what communities we're getting ready to do in the inspection schedule. Are we going to start doing that, or?
It's going to be kind of hard to do given the way we're doing it.
Yeah.
Well, right. So what we have decided to do is the inspectors are divided by villages. Therefore, I would know what inspector is doing what village at what time. I don't think it's necessary for us to put it in the Friday flash where they're going to be, but we will be posting suggestions on things that they can do. Also, I know that Gary had written several letters throughout the last few years that will assist residents, and we'll be bringing those right back up in the Friday flash and the magazine.
I think one of the things people found of value is like, oh crap, they're actually going to be doing my area. I need to just take a good look at my house and get stuff cleaned up. I don't think it's a bad thing. I think it is I have a responsibility. I do care about my house, and they're going to be coming type thing.
It seems to me that we could certainly say in the Friday Flash, we have an inspector that's handling Artisan Park and South Village, and they are currently inspecting, and we have another inspecting North Village and wherever, right? And just identify, the areas that have been assigned to each inspector and just repeat that message for a while so people know that we're doing inspections. I'm just excited that we're actually doing them, to be honest. It's going to be painful. Also, we've got 2.5 years worth of really not inspecting. So so if you're out there listening, it's time to clean up your house. I see a hand up. Is there somebody?
Kevin Kirby.
Okay. Does he have a comment about that topic?
Good evening, board. Yes, I do. Do I have a mic?
Yeah, go ahead, Kevin.
Awesome. First, I'm very excited to see that you guys are fully staffed up for ARC. It's going to be excellent for the community as a whole. Has the board and management looked at, now that we are fully staffed up, dedicating some specific time to Croa amenities and those facilities to give those an extra look with a different point of view?
I can respond to that, and that will be Natalie and Brian. They have a monthly inspection checklist for all of the Croa parks and amenities that they will be doing, essentially grading and addressing maintenance issues as they come up.
Thanks, Kevin. Where did I hear that before? Good, something that needs to be done. All right, any other comments on this before we go to the next topic? All right, let's move on. We're talking about the K-8 contract update and discussion. For those of you that have not been following this, we have a contract for maintenance and repair of the amenities that were used by sporting activities, including Little League, at the K-8 fields. We have been in negotiations for, I'd say, at least 6 months. We've not gotten much in the way of a response from the school district, so we continue to pursue that. The contract that we have ends in June, and so we sent a formal letter terminating the agreement so that we could, because we had to give 60 days notice, we did that. We're now trying to get to an agreement. I'm going to turn it over. I know that the group, it's Cindy and Jim and Brian that have been handling the negotiations. Any of the three of you want to take the lead and talk about where we are with that?
All right, I'll start. Where we're at is, we actually went through a few counter proposals with them, just trying to figure out where they're at. Where we've ended up is we are proposing contract terms to Tom Slayton to work with their attorney, where we would take care of the baseball field out here. So you got the practice area on Celebration Avenue right across from the 851 building here. You got that baseball field by there, and then you've got another baseball field that is inside the school there. That one is used by kids for recess every day and stuff like that. It's a tough field. We've got kids running on it every single day for recess. It's in tough shape there. So we proposed that we would take care of those three. We're getting up, we had quotes from Yellowstone. I think Lauren's getting updated quotes from one of the vendors here, probably in the neighborhood of 30,000 a year is what we would pay. What we then requested of the school is that the 3 tennis courts, which are beyond ugly, and they have agreed they're beyond ugly, will be completely redone. I've heard they may turn them into basketball courts, they may turn them into a playground area for kids and stuff. What our request was that they not be unsightly, but actually be nice looking for the community as a whole. We did an inspection of the school property under Croa guidelines, have given them stuff that we'd like to have cleaned up. So it's really going to be like thick, and cleaning up the courts is not a cheap item, and converting it to something meaningful and making it look nice. So we're spending some money, they're spending some money. We'll hear more in the next few weeks because we're running out of time, but that's where we're going with this one right now. And I think we're looking at a 2-year contract that we could have an option to renew, but ultimately we may look to another Little League solution longer term, but in the near term, we don't have one.
Cindy or Jim, you want to add anything to that? Okay. Any public comment about that? Okay, I'm going to keep moving.
But board, how about board comment first?
Yes, I'm sorry.
Yeah. So with the tennis courts, Brian, just you talked about them repairing. Would there be any potential for residents to use those courts, or is it just repair so they're not unsightly?
It's to be repaired, so it's not unsightly. It's not. I don't think they're going to be tennis courts. I think they're going to be basketball or a combination of basketball, and stuff like that. But it's going to be for the kids.
Okay. And then also just to clarify, we did send the notice, and we talked about this at our last meeting. We sent the notice, and so if nothing happens, if no new contract is signed, then it's all on them starting July 1. And then anyone who wants to use the ball fields negotiates directly with the schools and not with Croa if there's no new contract. Just to be clear.
That is a correct statement. That's a correct statement.
We're trying to avoid that, obviously.
We're trying to avoid that, but if that happens, then it's all on the county and all on the schools. Hopefully, we can have an amicable resolution.
And the reason we're trying to make this work is there's about 200 Celebration children, residents, who play ball in the spring and in the fall. So there's a lot of Celebration use.
So maybe we accelerate, work with the recreation committee to accelerate that other option that we've been talking about for our own ball field.
Okay. Other comments before we move on? All right, let's move to discussion item 3, updates for ongoing projects. Patrick, can you set up the slide deck for me? Because I got to do one more. I want to talk a little bit about why we do amenities. There's been a lot of discussion, particularly about lawn sports and where did it come from and how does that happen? And I think it's important to get a perspective maybe at 30,000 feet about amenities. The reason that we have amenities, we're going to get to, but the definition of an amenity, I found this and I thought it was really good. A community amenity means any public benefit, improvement, or contribution that can enhance the quality of life for a community. And it includes, but it's not limited to, public spaces, land, and facilities to meet a range of environmental, cultural, recreational, and infrastructure needs of the community. And I think that's a good overview of what amenities are. We talk about it, we use the word a lot. Here's the definition. Now, what is an amenity? Well, we've got four kinds, I think, in general. We've got green spaces. These are parks, wetlands, walking trails. We also have recreational spaces. These are outdoor spaces for sports and other activities. We have community spaces. This is for meetings and events. And then we have performing spaces. These are cultural and artistic performances. And those things all make up what we think of as an amenity. So where do amenity ideas come from? One of the things that you hear right now is if it doesn't come from a survey, it's not legitimate. I don't think that's true. But to the extent that we do surveys, they help give us some information. We have done, 4 surveys of the public in the last 10 years. We have done what I think we would describe as a recreation-focused assessments numerous times. We have gone out and gotten management reports, and management has told us about different needs that came up. But all of these things represent at best a snapshot in time. They simply show us what at that moment people were most interested in, but it was always about a public conversation. So there's never been a drive to do something without some discussion. Some of these items had more discussion, some had less, some had a lot of yelling, some had a whole lot of yelling. But that's ultimately how we move from one to the other. We also looked at where the needs of the community was. We looked at the future design and usage. We looked at the growth of the community, the diversity of our population. I'm going to say this very clearly. We have done a lot for young people. We have done a fair amount for people that are older, but we are not exclusively doing amenities for any one group. And that means sometimes people are going to have to understand that a particular amenity doesn't meet everybody's needs, it meets somebody's needs. We looked at the size of the need, and we also asked ourselves, frankly, what's affordable? What can we afford to do? Some things cost a lot of money, some things less. And then finally, we look at what would fulfill our cornerstones, and we've asked that and continue to try and use that as our North Star. Now, why do we have amenities? It seemed obvious to me, but Jim and I were sitting down the other day and we were kind of trying to sketch it out, and we said, well, there's quality of life. You want a better lifestyle. It increases the value of our homes. It improves community engagement. It appeals to future buyers. We've had some owners that have said, well, this particular proposed amenity here or there is going to reduce the value of my home. I just found out that my home made more money than I did last year. So I think that the reality is right now that we are increasing value of all of the properties in Celebration, and that's a good thing. There are 4 costs to every amenity. There's a construction cost in most cases. There's a maintenance cost. There's a replacement cost when it has to be replaced. And there's an operational cost. You can see where those pots of money come from to pay for it, but that's the life cycle of an amenity. So we have to pay for these, and that's part of the reason that we ask what's affordable and what's not. So how do we add new amenities? There is a process. It doesn't just happen randomly. The first thing that happens is we do a discovery phase in which we do the surveys, we ask, we look at the master plan, we ask for other communities, we consider what is going on in communities around the country. Then we evaluate the cost, the time, the benefits, the location. We understand that not in my backyard is a real thing, and we try to deal with that as well. And then we go to implementation. We find vendors, we do the construction, we bring the project to completion. There's an example there of the dog park, which went through all of those steps. So where are we currently? Well, if you ask about lawn sports or the idea of Celebration Hall, I would say that they're in the evaluation phase. If you ask about pickleball, I heard the other day that somebody said pickleball was killed. No, it's actually in the implementation phase. We're actually trying to find vendors. We'll get bids, and it'll go out for construction and completion. So that's where we are on those projects. Now, here's what I think we're going to be talking about and what we'll do tonight with respect to lawn sports. First of all, we will make a preliminary location decision. That's a preliminary decision. That's based on what we know right now. Secondly, we will request bids based on that preliminary location. So we will ask for bids on what does it cost to do lawn sports at this location. Here's what we will not do tonight, and I want to be explicit. We will not make any final decisions. That's not what we're here to do tonight. So those of you that thought that this was the Armageddon moment, you're too early. And secondly, we're not going to spend any money tonight. Not for this, at least. We've already spent our money for tonight. So that's not going to happen either. And I wanted to be clear about it. All right. So with that as an overview of amenities, let's talk about the Croa amenities inventory and the quality grades. Lauren?
I'm going to kick that to Natalie since that's.
This actually speaks to what Kevin asked about earlier.
Okay, so basically today, I revised our parks and passive parks inventory sheet that will be conducting monthly inspections. Both myself and Brian will be completing an inspection of each park because, you know, more eyes are better than one pair of eyes. I also have a background in quality assurance and et cetera in my career background. So I redid that. I added every passive park that was missing. So we're going to be doing those and then handing them over to our landscapers on a monthly basis. And they have 3 days to fix anything that is not acceptable. Unless it's something where we have to wait for sod to get in or something, you know, that they have to order. And then we're also, with the new projects that are going on, we are going to take before pictures, after pictures, take the proposal that was given to us, and we're going to go do a punch list on every single project that's being done with everything that's being approved. We're keeping it on record. We'll also be attaching pictures, notes, and everything in that inspection sheet that we're doing monthly as well. So yeah,
all right,
that's what we're doing.
Comments or questions? Thank you. It's a comprehensive task, and we're looking to get you an administrative assistant. Yes. So you can help do that.
Thank you.
Comments from the board?
Is there any place that the residents will be able to see those before and after pictures?
Yes, we're going to be posting them.
Yeah, we're working on gathering them right now because a lot of the projects we have going aren't completed yet. But once we have them and organized, I'll be working with Patrick and JR to develop a place for everybody to go and look at them.
Look, interesting.
Other comments or questions? All right. Can we move on to item C? All right. Item 3C, Civic Corridor Project Pickleball. Brian, I'm going to kick it back to you.
Sure. All right, we had a meeting yesterday. Lauren was added. I was added as board member. There, we had the subject matter experts from the pickleball group. We had the civil engineer, who's the lead for the project, KPM Franklin. We had architects. We had electrical, irrigation. We had a good group. Here's where we stand. The surveying and geotech work is completed on Lot D. So let me remind everybody what we agreed to the structure on Lot D is we've got the existing amenity building that has the bathrooms and everything. We have the parking lot near that. Right next to the parking lot, we're going to put another parking lot, same size as the existing parking lot. Next to that, it's going to go 8 pickleball courts. Next to that will be a pad-ready grass field, which could be used for parking for major events, but it could also be used for all types of sports, like football, whatever. So it'll be a good-sized field. So all of Lot D is being developed. Now, what happened is The first thing is surveys have been done in the past, but for any types of permitting with everything, and permitting wise, we have to get permits from Reedy Creek, Southern Florida, Osceola County, and about 18 other places, plus ARC and TCC. So we go through about 8 to 9 permitting processes. That requires new surveys, that requires new geotech and everything, which is done. They have 3 phases. They have a 30% plan phase, a 60%, and a 90%. The 30% plan phase is expected to be done at the end of May or just a little before that. That'll be, here is the design. Here is what the new parking lot will look like by the old parking lot. Here's what the pickleball courts are going to look like. Here's the flat field. We have to do a sign off on that. We got about 5 or 6 days. Really, I think the sign off, because everybody here has seen the picture. So from a board perspective, I don't think the sign off amounts to a whole lot, really. You've seen the pictures, that they want to make sure the parking lot looks good and cool. They're looking at the lighting to make sure the lighting matches the lighting on the old parking lot, all that type of stuff, so that a good design picture is in place. Then they want to have a 60% phase, which is where they really do all the detailed work on irrigation, if on the grass field, for example, drainage, electrical, and everything like that. That phase is supposed to be done by June 13th, sorry. And then we've got about a week to approve that. Really, from a board perspective, it'd be a miracle if you notice anything. You'll just, the one thing you will notice is we've got the subject matter experts working with them to talk about coverings, whether it's more efficient to have a covering over the courts themselves or just with over stands and bleachers and stuff like that. So we're working with them to figure out the best answer for that.
Let me just stop you. So we've got three points of contact here. There's a 30%, a 60%, and a 90%. I know that Brian and David and I were all part of the Fields Complex process. I don't think we did that back then. I think it was just all thrown out there, and that caused it to be less than optimum. We'll leave it at that. So I think this is a better structure. Do you agree?
Agreed.
Okay.
And then after the 60, about a month after that, you got the 90% phase. The difference between 60 and 90 is really, they said, dotting I's and crossing T's and starting to get feedback from some of the reviews. Our goal is to go out for bids in early August. And then once we get those bids back, and we're going to component price them. So what's the parking lot cost? What does the pickleball piece cost? What does the pad ready cost and stuff like that? We had estimates before, as you know, when we approved the project structure. And the goal then would be we as a board giving final approval to whatever we're going to decide by late November, say Thanksgiving to early December is the goal, so that, and then it's construction time if we proceed.
Okay, board comments. Bill?
First, this is a very good process, the 30, 60, 90 and the reviews that go along with it. When you go to bid, who's going to be responsible for the scope and the bid? In other words, if somebody misses something and we get the change order, whose problem is that? Obviously, they expect us to pay, and it may be our problem because it's something we changed, but it could also be a design deficiency. And who's taking charge of the construction documents, construction dating, construction?
Ann Round of KPM Franklin is driving the entire bus. She's got a lot of people around her. We're relying on her. Lauren is our point person working with her. I'm not going to say Lauren's construction expert. I don't think she is. And, so we're definitely relying on them and the quality of the bid process. Being very honest.
Any other board comments? Public comments on pickleball, online or here in the room? Okay.
I've had one question from will TCC and ARC be involved in the process? We actually are coming out with a schedule that we will publish to the board and others, and TCC and ARC will both be on that schedule. We discussed that in our meeting yesterday.
Okay. David, did you have a comment?
It's just exciting to see this moving forward and in a good way. So that's just very exciting. Thank you for the update, Brian.
Yeah, thank you. And thanks to all the board members that are working on these things. It's a lot of work that has to go in. All right, now we come to item D, lawn sports. Let's see. Again, I think I'm going to turn to Brian first to update us, and then we will get to public comments. I promise. We're just going to take board comments first and discuss.
Sure. Brian gets the lucky one on this one. Huh?
Oh, was it somebody?
I can speak on behalf of it if you want.
We'll get to you, Celia, because I know you've got some things to talk about here too.
So we have been going through a process. We've narrowed the scope down to, we're developing 2 fields. We have chosen.
2 lawns.
Pardon?
2 lawns.
2 croquet fields.
2 croquet lawns.
2 lawns.
Are you talking, no,
That's what it's called, right? Is a lawn?
it's called a croquet lawn.
Okay.
Okay, fine.
Yeah, not field. I just want to
2
make sure we
places where
get
you
it
play
right.
croquet.
Okay. Inside wherever we place this, we've got 2 croquet things. And we've got rid of everything else other than that, other than a canopy. We will have a fence around it. What we're talking about, because it's most economical, is planting grass seed or really scripts and letting them grow. Right now, what we have been talking about is Heritage Hall, which is no surprise to people. How we ended up at Heritage Hall is North Village is not wide enough when we looked at it. Otherwise, we'd have to turn it funny and take up a whole lot of space. When you talk about East Lawn by Indigo, there's a big space there. But in all honesty, if we're ever going to have another Little League solution, that's where it would have to go. It's the logical place. It's already got stuff set up. And it wouldn't shock me if we need another solution ultimately for that. There is no other place to go, in my mind. So that's really how we've ended up at this point in the conversation.
I want to turn it over to Celia, because I think part of the conversation here has to be about heritage and what the actual space usage is. I know you went out, you actually did a video, you went out and measured it.
Right.
Yeah, so you want to talk about that a little bit?
So actually, made to the board, what the task force was tasked with. I guess that's why we called it a task force. I told them, you need to come up with a reason why we are choosing Heritage over East Lawn. Because you can't put 2 croquet lawns at East Lawn, where clearly they play baseball now, lacrosse, and soccer practice still there. You can't put it in the middle of the field, you may have the baseball. So we came up with the Heritage concept. I handed it out, if anybody wants a copy of it. If anybody would like to have a meetup with me at Heritage, I am more than willing to dedicate one Saturday where I can just be there so people can get the facts of why this was chosen. It's not taking up the whole field.
How much of the field is it taking up?
Less than half, 40%.
Yeah.
I think you actually have a picture there.
We have a picture of it. I have the dimensions on here that the task force came up with, why they came up with it to create, the people of all ages. This was supposed to be a multi-generational facility. It was supposed to have a putting green. It was supposed to have horseshoes. It was supposed to have a lot of things. But every time we got a drawing from Albert, it took more and more flex space away. So we decided we're just going to go with the 2 croquet lawns now, fence it in.
Yeah, then we've got some photos up there.
And keep the space open. And I spoke to Albert in multiple meetings. We met with Nikki. We discussed the Montessori school, how this would open it up for them to be able to use this. We discussed summer breakout camp, how the kids would be able to utilize these croquet lawns. We discussed a lot of things. We're not taking the whole field. The only reason why we're fencing it in is because this is going to be not very expensive. It needs to be maintained. We have to make sure that there's no vandalism. So it's going to be set up on a reservation process where you make a reservation to play croquet. It's just not for the old people in Celebration. It's a community amenity that we're trying to enhance so that everyone can play. I have 9 grandchildren. I want to be able to play something with them. My struggle with the community since I moved here is to get a baseball field. I wanted a baseball field put on the soccer fields, the multi-purpose fields.
Okay, stay with croquet.
So what I'm saying is I feel everybody's passion, but they need to know the facts. And like I said, I'm willing to be there to share whatever facts you want. And we have the drawings from Albert. We're down to the 2 fields. We're taking less lawns. See?
Debit credit.
So anyway,
Okay.
as the president of Croa said last year, when we've been discussing all of these pickleball lawn sports, it's called shared sacrifice, right, Brian?
You got it.
So that's how I feel. We need to share everything.
Yeah, I gotta, past president thing. Bill, thank you, Celia, I appreciate it.
I was just wondering if we could expand the top right picture, so it's the full screen. Because I think that's the best shot.
Right.
So,
Although remember, this has got more pavilions, right, Brian, than we're gonna do, and it's
I think
more elaborate.
This is wrong with just the 2 fields.
Okay.
A pavilion to the right, there is an entrance there. So I think this is pretty much reflects what's being talked about.
And
Okay.
I think he was supposed to move it back more. I'm not sure.
It's pretty representative.
So let's talk about this idea. I know that we're gonna hear that there are people that don't want this at Heritage. For those of you that don't remember, we tried to do this at Artisan. That didn't work because there were people that didn't want it in Artisan. And no matter where you place an amenity like this, you're going to have some people that say, well, that's not the right place. The board has looked at a variety of locations, as you've heard tonight, and correct me if I'm wrong, board, but I think the consensus of this board, in fact, the unanimous consensus of this board, is that Heritage is the best location, and that's what we ought to price out. But again, as I said, we're not committing ultimately to that. We're just saying that's where we are today, and that's the pricing that we need to get in terms of bids, and then we'll come back to have further conversation. Any other comments anyone wants to make about this before we go to the public? I know everyone's holding on. Okay, yeah. You want to wait?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think. Okay. All right. So now we had 2 residents here in the room that said they wanted to speak. So let me start. That would be Keith Thompson. You first, please. And again, 3 minutes of time, and we'll set our timer too.
Keith Thompson, 1201 Celebration Avenue. Really appreciate that slide there because it talks about a master plan. The problem is there hasn't been a master plan. It's there on the website. You talk about fact-based, that's the loss study, lose study, lose study, depending on how you pronounce it. Second to last is croquet. 47% of that field from the numbers on the back of the sheet, by the way, Celia. And I would recommend
That's less than half.
Let me speak.
No, we said 40 as well. So I would recommend this picture, and that document goes up on with the notes or whatever for the agenda so people can see it, full disclosure. I actually want to talk about Celebration Hall.
I'm going to stop you because that is not on the agenda here, but you have your time, but we're not talking about that. Right now, we're talking about this item.
Okay, I thought it was on a comment, which was comments about.
Comments based on the subject that we're talking about.
All right, well, that wasn't, okay, I'll ask the question then. That at the start of the meeting last week, somebody asked a question about an incident at a rec committee meeting. I'd just like to know how comments like that are recorded in the minutes, etc., and actions so that we know what's happening. And by the way, that wasn't on the agenda either.
Correct, it was not. All right. Let's see. Let's go on to the next one, and then we'll come back to.
I have a.
This
is about something else.
Okay, so I want to wait
because it was brought up about what was said about the recreation committee and our liaison.
Yeah, I don't want to. I want to stay focused on lawn sports for right now. I know that we're going to have time to get to those things, and if we do, we'll come back and you can have the rest of your time to comment, Keith. No, we got it here. We got it. I know we get crazy about 20-second increments here. Let's go on. The next person that said they wanted to speak was Mr. Tagdir. Am I pronouncing your name?
Yeah, you got it. All right, Pasha Tagdir, 1226 Roycroft Avenue. So I spoke last time. I'm not trying to be divisive. I know maybe I came up a little passionate, but I really feel that the board is overlooking what the residents want when they're picking this location. The majority of the residents, I feel, don't want this park by Heritage Hall to be taken over by lawn sports. In that survey that was taken around, lawn sports like croquet and bocce were second to last. This isn't something we should be focusing on right now. You guys said you're here to get it right. This isn't getting it right. This is not what you should be focusing your attention on right now. There's too many other things. I understand you want these amenities. You say it's going to bring the community together. It's going to bring your grandchildren to play. But these are all sports that you can play without a purpose field like that, like bocce ball. You can get a bocce set. Croquet. The Croquet Association has been playing croquet for how many years they've been playing, and that hasn't stopped them. They don't need a designated space. I was just at the park this weekend. I was watching families play. I took my kids there. Like, it's a nice open space. We don't have much open space anymore. If you start building there, and then you're like, oh, it only takes 47%. But then what if you want to build something else and keep going and keep going? That's what happens these days. You build and build and build. Keep this space open. What happens 10, 15, 20 years from now when these people aren't playing croquet? And that is just laying away withering. And you got to pay money to maintain it. It just doesn't make sense. Listen to the community right now. They don't want this. So focus your attention on something else. I started a petition on Facebook last week, got 157 people to sign, and the majority of the people were saying they don't want this lawn sports at that park. So that's all I'm asking is just listen. You say you went through an evaluation or discovery, you did a survey. This is not what the residents want. So just listen to them. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We have a couple of comments online. Who do we have? Alina, can you hear us? Hello?
Yes, I can. Hi.
Okay, your 3 minutes has started. Go ahead.
I'd just like to point out that it's hypocritical to use the same low study to point out things that are necessary like parking and add parking into Law D. And using the same data to actually get croquet courts, which are, again, like Pasha said, second to last. It makes no sense to use data incorrectly and inconsistently. I don't need the whole 3 minutes.
Okay, thank you for your comments. And then Charles, I assume Charles Richards. Can you hear us?
Yep, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, and go ahead.
All right, Charles Richards, 1020 Banks Rose Street. You know, it's funny. I was trying to piece together how lawn sports got to this point. So I went to the Celebration website. I found the capital improvement page. I clicked lawn sports, and I found nothing. Not a PowerPoint presentation, not the process for assembling the lawn sports task force. I didn't find meeting videos. I didn't find meeting minutes. I didn't find a supporting Lowe's study. No community engagement. I found a page with a picture of a croquet field and a definition of what croquet is. None of the diagrams that Celia referenced. Jackson, you outlined the process slide a little bit ago. Where is that process? Is this right? We're here to get things right, not to be right. I think you've quoted that a few times. The project isn't right. You had about 15 to 20 croquet players at the last meeting, and I applaud them for coming, and I applaud them for their organization. But I have some news for you. You don't represent 15 to 20 people who show up at a 6 p.m. meeting. That is not right. You represent every Croa member outside of town hall, many who can't attend these meetings. And there are members of the community to which you represent that are not in favor of this project, as Pasha talked about. So why do we continue to ignore their concerns? That isn't right. I will outline the concern. The field at Heritage Hall is perfect the way it is. It doesn't need to be enhanced. Croquet players can play croquet the way it is today. And if it truly doesn't work, then we need to discuss other locations. And it certainly doesn't make sense, at least at the initial level, to build 2 fields. We have several other competing amenity priorities, and resources are finite: land and financial. And you've provided no data beyond the overall interest in croquet to back this decision. And let's also talk about, when you build amenities, you have to maintain amenities. And what I also want to say is, this is not an anti-croquet position. That's the wrong way to think about this. If you wanted to put a skate park there, it would be the exact same concerns. It comes down to process. You really need to do a better job of listening to the community, and not just the 15 to 20 who show up at a meeting. The community that can't show up to the meeting are making their voices heard through the petition Pasha referenced. And they're going to continue to follow this issue until we find a better solution that works for everyone. I just want to close my comments again by what you said, Jackson. We're here to get things right, not to be right. You have a chance now to get things right. The way to get things right is to stop the plans for these fields at Heritage Hall. Go back to the drawing board with input from the community. That's a positive step towards getting things right. Thank you.
And Charles, apparently I shorted you about 20 seconds last time. Do you want to use those 20 seconds tonight?
I will yield the rest of my time. Thank you for acknowledging that.
Thank you. All right. Any other comments from online or in the room? Kevin Kirby? Okay, go ahead, Kevin.
Hi all. Thanks again for setting up everything that you guys have discussed so far today. It's definitely, I've only been off the board 2 months, and you all have really been biting off quite a lot. And forgive me if I get concerned as just a homeowner here, looking at a lot of money being spent right now, a lot of projects. I commend you and applaud you for the passion, but I want to be cautious, especially with all we've learned with the fields that have barely been used because of COVID. And a lot of expenses that we did not expect around them. So one thing that I want to make clear, and a lot of you on the board know, that I do live right near this field. This is not in my backyard type of a scenario. I think amenities, especially close to my home, are welcome. And that is why I actually like the area that I live, that large open field that is used on the daily, all different times. Great for pickup games, since a lot of our residents either A, don't have a large yard, especially in this area, or B, the fields that they've all gone ahead and contributed to, not only the initial expense, but the ongoing expenses, are not available to them, those fields down by the complex. So that is a big challenge that I remain concerned with, that the board has yet to address. We have a lot of things that have improved in the community, whether it be the dog park, the upcoming pickleball, or even this. But we always forget about the full picture when it's the expenses as previously mentioned, or the parking. I'd like to go ahead and hear how the parking is going to be addressed, because as is, these streets surrounding this park are extremely tight. There is not much leeway. There's enough room for a vehicle to drive through when vehicles are parked on both sides of the street. And that's going to be a continued challenge and concern that will affect this area of the neighborhood. The Spring Park pool only has, I believe, a handful of parking locations, and I believe, again, they are all handicap locations. So I don't know what other ADA requirements there may be for parking for an amenity that's not just an open field. So those would be things that I'd like to go ahead and see the board look into and answer, and really get an understanding of the full picture, not just the pretty concept art. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Any other comments? We got covered? Anyone?
Eileen Barr.
Okay. Eileen, can you hear us?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, please.
Okay. Eileen Barr, 1138 Mosaic Drive. As you all know, I'm a big believer in green fields. Green fields are important. And a croquet field is a green field. What concerns me here, one, I do want to acknowledge what Kevin just said and a few other people. I've used these streets on either side of Heritage Hall and the Spring Loop Park, and they, in fact, are treacherous. because, well, I guess we can lobby to get an additional stop sign in one place, but they're very narrow. If people can park on both sides, it can become a really tremendous bottleneck. The other thing the one thing I am opposed to is, and I see the fencing, it looks very nice. Let me get this straight, that it's not going to be a real fence. It's only going to be some bushes, but I would like to see even less bushes. I understand the need for a very flat surface, for a different grass, that it needs a high maintenance, that the croquet people like this because they are close to the bathrooms, and that is great. But I would still like to see it open. I do not believe, from listening for many years, that these fields are expensive as they are maintained will necessarily be destroyed if a bunch of 4-year-olds run around on them when they're not being used for croquet. Should it be a cleat-free field? Absolutely. Should there be a sign that says, please respect the delicate grass of the croquet fields? Yes. But I would like to see we get rid of those, I'm looking at it right here, those trees in the middle, the bushes in the middle, and whatever that white thing is, and it should just be a croquet field that does not bisect the field. Thank you.
All right, we've got 10 minutes left, so I'm going to end this conversation. I appreciate all the comments and the thoughts, and the board will deal with those. I'm going to leave. You want to talk, don't you?
You think?
Yeah, I know you do. Can you hold it for board comments since we're already at this point?
Yeah.
Would you be okay with that?
Yeah.
All right. Let's move on then to item 4, which was the Lakeside Great Lawn Permanent Canopy. Essentially, the question came up during the discussion of Celebration Hall and the advisory group. Couldn't we have a permanent canopy on the Great Lawn in Lakeside? The answer is maybe. That is not necessarily a replacement for a performing arts or a community center, but it's a possibility. David and I had the opportunity to talk to Paige Pierce this week to talk about whether or not the Celebration Company would be amenable to that idea. I think it's safe to say, David, that he said maybe, but we'd have to take a very close look at the aesthetics and what it would mean in that section. So it's a possibility.
That's correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
okay.
correct. Yeah.
So,
it was more about aesthetics. How does it look?
Yeah. So what I really want to say to the board tonight is this is something we're going to be able to talk about and consider and look at different variations and pricing. I know, Cindy, you've talked about this and suggested it. There are a variety. I'm sorry, Celia. Sorry. It's the drugs. That's all I can tell you. And so that'll start tonight. President of the board's on drugs. And so the reality is that we will go to discuss all of this, I think, and to consider it. Any board questions or comments at the very broad level, Bill?
Just the idea of the permanent canopy, what does that do to the grass?
Well, that's what
stop being a great lawn.
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe there's fabric that lets enough light go through.
I think
Go ahead.
from the discussions last year when this was brought up, I think JR has all the information on what was discussed and what could possibly be put down to replace the grass. Correctly, JR? You have all that information?
We were just in the initial discussion.
Right, it was part of special events, Dory,
Okay.
JR, just all different ideas on what can be put there and what could be replaced.
Okay. Brian?
My comment would,
I'm sorry. Let me go to Brian first, and then I'll go to David.
my comment would be, I think there would be value in having Dory and her group at least do it, because you need to think about the grass, but you also need to think about the sustainability of the thing. What would the acoustics be like? I mean, you can put something up and say, oh my gosh, it made the acoustics horrible. So it needs to be thought about properly if it's going to be an option. That's all I'm saying.
Okay, and I'm going to take exception to that. We have set the parameters for the advisory group, and if we want to go back and revisit those, that's a separate discussion. We can have that discussion. I don't think it's a necessity for that advisory group to talk about it because I think you can do the canopy and something else. I don't know that it necessarily replaces any of them, but procedurally, we said we were going to stay with just 3 options. So at this moment, I still think that's where we ought to be, but you know, get 4 votes and you can override.
Yeah,
David.
Yeah. I think this came around last summer, 4th of July, when we had 2 events back to back, and both were either rained out or close to being rained out, but we had a temporary structure. So I think the idea was maybe there should be something permanent, whether that becomes something that is canvas type that gets rolled back during certain times of the year or when high winds and hurricanes are coming, or it's more permanent. But I think there's lots of options to look at, and whether we want to cover that space so we have a covered space for inclement weather or not. Again, larger discussions to come.
Okay, let me go back to Brian's comment. I'm glad to take a quick survey of the board, and if there's a consensus of the board that we need to add that to the charge for the Celebration Hall Advisory Group, then we can do that. Is that okay?
I think it's the perfect question, because then we can put the bid for issue and we just do a roll call once and for all, and then we can move on.
Okay, so go ahead, make your motion.
So my motion would be that Dury is the chair of the Celebration Hall Group, that they add a canopy or whatever the right structure is over Lakeside as the last piece that they look at. Because if we're going to consider it, I want to look at for acoustics, what it looks like for TCC and everything that way. And
okay, so that's the motion. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Conversation, or can we go to a vote?
And
yeah, the only
hold on, David, 1 second. Hold on,
Just to piggyback on what David's saying, that's when the discussion was started with the structure after July 4th last year when JR had that.
But what we're asking is whether or not the advisory group should add it to the options that they want to discuss. So, Jim?
I think the scope is quite wide now, and what the charge that we're giving them in a 90-day period is very challenging for that advisory group.
All right. I'm going to go ahead and do a roll call vote. Jim, how do you vote?
No.
Bill?
No.
Cindy?
Yes.
Thanks.
Celia?
Yes.
Ryan?
yes.
David?
no.
And I vote no. I believe that the motion fails by a vote of 5-2.
4-3.
4-3, please count.
The drugs.
Which you're not sharing.
But Jackson, to this point, though, I think we can still explore, maybe not that group, but still explore this as a potential option.
We are absolutely exploring it, but now I'm asking them to explore it as a board and not give it to the advisory group.
Exactly.
So,
Keep my larger point is keep the Celebration Hall Group focused on community center and performing arts. That was their charge. Keep that focus.
All right, thank you. I'm going to go to board comments. Let me start with you, David. I'll try and keep them shortish.
No comments. Thank you for a good meeting. Good luck tomorrow. Good luck tomorrow. Thank you.
I have one comment. At the luau, staff did a great job of cooking. It was a wonderful event and everything. I would like to ask that the board review the whole business model. I am not a fan of staff cooking. I think they're working their butt off. We hear a million things that are going on. While I appreciate you giving your evenings and stuff like that, I think that's an unrealistic expectation, in my opinion. And if we're going to do it, then I'd like us to actually take a careful look at everything, whether it's licensing, insurance, and the whole 9 yards, so that we don't find out that I'm asking that we consider challenging the business model, because I don't think it's the right place to be.
And we are putting it on the May 27th agenda, just so everybody knows we will have that discussion. May 25th. So me and numbers are just not going to work tonight. We got that clearly. Okay. Thank you, Brian. Appreciate it. Celia?
May 27th meeting.
No, May 25th.
Yeah, he must know if you got a board comment.
Yes, I just want to say, Grand Manners, Natalie, Lauren, Rose, is she here?
Yes, behind you.
I'm sorry, just the whole team. They are just Brian, they are in full speed motion and nothing is stopping them. They're like, the Duracell battery bunny. They just keep going. And I just want to thank you because you can start seeing it in the community. And like I always say, I'm at the pool, and when a resident who complains all the time with every right says to me, oh my God, things are really starting to improve. It makes me feel good. So thank you. Roger, they're an amazing team. Thank you.
Teamwork.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Cindy?
So there's been some conversation tonight about amenities and, with tennis and other people that don't live here, blah, blah, blah. So I would just like to remind everyone, if you're sitting at the pool and you see somebody standing there and not coming in, please don't invite them in. We're not asking you to be the pool police, but I've had residents tell me that they've gone to their neighborhood pool and there's a line and they say to the people, do you live here? No, but we were told that if we just stood here long enough, somebody would let us in. Celia, Bill and I were at Lakeside just talking between the pool and the thing. And there was a guy in the playground with his kids and he looked at us, he says, you want to come in? It's like, no. So, I mean, this is wear and tear. These are people that don't live here. Also, if someone hasn't paid their assessments, they're shut off and their cards don't work. So, you may feel sorry for them because they're lugging 3 kids and noodles and all that kind of stuff, but please don't assume that they live here and just let them in because you're not doing any of us any favors because of, additional wear and tear and, you're letting, in fact, I've also heard that timeshare people come and take people to lunch and they're overheard saying, all this can be yours if you, buy a timeshare here. So just,
Yeah.
I know it's sad, but just figure out a way to get in without you letting them in.
Thank you, Cindy. Bill?
I have no comments.
Okay, Jim, I asked you to wait, and I'm sorry for that.
You're not, but that's okay.
But we're out of time now.
So we are overtime already, so I'm not the cause of the.
Take as much time as you
I'm the
need.
cause of the extension of the overtime.
You're gonna have Bill's minutes
Go ahead.
too.
So I'm gonna speak on 2 things because that's how many you deferred, which is fine. I'm gonna speak to the less passionate one for me, but something that is very important for me to say. There was a resident who was part of a committee that spoke up against Brian last week, or last meeting. I don't know what their experiences are. I do know my experience as the chairman of the technology committee for 2 years with Brian as liaison, and we could not have asked for a better person. He was collaborative. He was very good at letting us know the political implications of things that we were thinking about, what a liaison should do. And we appreciated that, and he was part of our group. And I can't imagine, but apparently there is some sort of dynamic in other committees where they don't want that. And I can't imagine what that would be, but I want to speak from my experience on a committee with Brian being on the board, the president one of those years. So that's another way to look at it. And so I know we don't necessarily want to speak against people, but I want to speak for Brian. Thank you, Brian.
Yes.
Okay.
Good.
So I'm just saying here to Jim, be calm. It's from Celia. Thank you, Celia.
Wait, that was supposed to be for me.
So I hear a lot of comments about fact-based, right? But I also hear things like a majority of residents, right? That's not a fact. That's an opinion. And as a matter of fact, it's an opinion that's not based on any fact at all, other than anecdotal discussions. So let's be clear about who is a special interest group and who isn't. If you don't have something that is voted on by everyone and passes, then it's not a majority. If you, that's all I'm gonna say about that. Okay, so I do have to say something else because I'm a father.
Go ahead.
And my daughter asked me to say this. She does not think it's right to be doubted and questioned when she gets up and uses her own agency to speak for herself. And the fact that some people in this community believe that I would put my daughter's opinion about that over the entire community is offensive to me. And I'm going to try to stop there. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you.
And can I say one more thing, piggybacking? I'm sorry.
No. Because I have to.
I know.
I want to just make two very brief comments. First of all, as you heard, David and I did meet with Paige Pierce at the Celebration Company. We gave a report to the board of what's going on with the Celebration Company and their turning over some of their responsibilities in the community. You'll hear more about that during the coming summer months. They were very cooperative and collaborative with us. Paige was very collaborative in terms of saying, we want to see you do what's best for the community. We recognize that it's time for that process to move to the next level. So I just want to publicly acknowledge them and thank Paige for that. The final comment I have to make is with regard to committees and advisory groups. I sent an email to all of the committee chairs, I hope you all got it, in which we indicated that committees will be meeting no more than 90 minutes, and that will require committees like Covenants and ARC to unfortunately have to have more meetings. But we cannot continue to ask volunteers and really to ask staff to stay out all of these extra hours. Last week, we had people that did not get home before 8 p.m. multiple nights during the week. That's more than we should be asking of our staff. It's just not fair and it's not right. We appreciate every volunteer that's in the community. We're volunteers as well, and there's just a limit to what we can do. So we've set that as an expectation. We're trying to hold to it with the board. I'm about 8 minutes over, but that's where we are. And with that, I would look for a motion to adjourn.
I'll make the motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
We stand adjourned. Thank you all for being here. David, thanks for being with us. Thank you all for being here in the room and online. Good night.
See you all soon. See you soon.
Enjoy.